Waiting for the other one. I got a request. We're going. Here we go. Excellent. There he is. Can you hear me?
I do. Let me stop shaking here a sec. One sec.
Yeah, maybe you prop up that phone for a second if you can.
Yeah, I am. And my wife suggested go on the phone, so that message never came up off the app.
You were on the computer. You can't join on a computer.
Ah.
You didn't know that?
No,
okay.
I didn't know that.
And you are very distant, so I don't know if you want to put in your iPods or your headphones. That will help a lot. Alrighty, and then we'll get going here. You were on. There we go. We're getting it. We're figuring it out. Okay. And you are very.
How's this, Andrew?
Yep, that's great. Much better. Much better. All right, good. Yeah. So, excellent. Let's get going because we're a little behind here. So we'll get going and start our conversation. So, thank you for joining us, Peter Goldsmith from the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. Just give us quickly, for the people on, so that they can understand your background. You're an agroeconomist. Can you give us a little bit of your background and your practice area?
Yeah. So I'm an agricultural economist. I direct the food and agribusiness program here at the University of Illinois. Teach food marketing and a graduate course on supply chain management and blockchain. Most of my work has historically been in Latin America. Way back when I was a Peace Corps volunteer in large animal husbandry in Ecuador. I now direct a multi-million-dollar research lab that looks at agricultural development, especially tropical soybean production in Africa. So that's what I'm up to.
All right, great. That's fantastic. So, all right, so let's talk about, obviously, as I let you know, the majority of the folks who follow us and who are on and will take part in this or listening are in the either real estate, hospitality, and I mean hospitality in a broad way. It could be restaurant, hotel, space, and so I think that's most of our constituency, and so we're interested in this. We're laymen as far as the food supply chain goes, and don't understand it that well. But what we do understand is that even though most of our locations are currently closed, they will be opening, and we want to understand sort of what's going on in the supply chain vis-a-vis mostly food, but everything else as well. We see it being affected in supermarkets on a day-to-day basis. At least I do when I go shopping. But I also want to understand, when we reopen our hotels, and I'm involved in a couple of properties that are reopening now, are we going to have problems with getting supplies and that kind of thing? I mean, just looking at the shelves in the supermarket, my guess is we'll have some level of problems. But I just sort of want to understand overall what's your a simplified version so we can all understand it. But yeah, what's happening in the food supply chain in the U.S. right now?
Okay, yeah, I think of it as two forces really create the situation that you're currently seeing, and then will affect what you will see when you guys reopen. The first one is that the food system has adjusted to firms that are members, firms in hospitality, adjusted over a number of years to pivot away from grocery retail into food service. And food service is the dominant, environment, supply chain that's operating in the food system. So that works, very well. Services, big hotels, little hotels, restaurants, and so on and so forth in cities, does a magnificent job. And then you throw in a wrench of COVID and shut that down, and demand, you can imagine, 180 degrees shifts to grocery. That's a big deal. The supply chain to service to provide service to food service is very different than the supply chain to supply a grocery store. So,
and if you're splitting that into, just real quickly, as a just to put a point on that, if you split that into percentages, what percentage of the food supply chain goes to the sort of the bigger, the restaurants and all of that kind of thing, and what percentage goes to grocery?
Yeah, you're probably looking at 65-35 now. When it, back in the day, I mean, people never ate out, right? Way back when. I mean, it's just a complete transformation. And if you look at countries outside the U.S. and developing countries, there's a major leap forward into what the trade calls food away from home. So those supply chains really are the dominant way food moves through the system. That doesn't change really a lot how you raise a pig or raise a cow or raise corn or a tomato in this, in a practical sense. So up chain, that's not where this transformation has occurred. It's been in manufacturing, slaughter, manufacturing, distribution, and then in the actual delivery to the consumer. That's where it's been radically changed from a food at home or grocery model. That's just not.
So if I restate what you just said, or what I hear you saying, is that 65% of the supply chain is normally going towards these big corporate customers, and 35% is going to the supermarkets. And all of a sudden, everything stops. Nobody's eating out. None of the corporations are using this 65%. And so I guess I'd suspect that the type of items that go to a supermarket are going to be different, or the packaging is certainly different than it is for big restaurants and that kind of stuff. And then
right. And the distributors are different. And the distributors, the actual chain itself and the nodes, you have distributors who focus on institutional and food service, and others who focus on retail.
So those, okay, so they're not, and so the ones that are focused on the supermarkets where we're all going now and buying, and there's much more demand there, they're having a harder time keeping up with that demand because they haven't had to do that in the past. Is that right?
That's correct. So they're full out, and the packaging, the forms, the types of products, it's just very hard to pivot. And remember, a lot of what the food supply chain deals with is perishable. So it's not like you had eggs or beef just sitting there that you're going to now break those, what they call breaking boxes, breaking down the pallets, breaking down the packaging, repackaging, and sending back out. That's very difficult to do. And you get this food dumping is kind of the gear grinding as the operations try to pivot towards grocery retail.
So that's why I see these pictures and I'm baffled by it. I see them flushing milk down the drain. I see vegetables in the fields. I see them throwing out all this stuff. And we have people that are going hungry. So yeah.
Right. And you think of yourself in Philadelphia. Not a lot of food is produced in Philadelphia. Those are just trucks coming in to feed Philadelphia city. I mean, it's just a tremendous quantity. And it's just the volumes are incredible and shifting in short order. We're talking about, very short compressed time frames. So that then leads to the question, what's the effect when you guys come back online? Oh, the system will absolutely adjust back. We can get into a discussion about changes in demand, the form of demand in a post-COVID retail environment, but that's a separate topic.
Well, I mean, I think that already, hotels are definitely going to open later than restaurants. Restaurants are already starting to open in many places in the country. for takeout, some for sit down. So there's going to be an increase of demand there immediately. Hotels will slowly, we hope, open and have demand there as well. So you're saying that this food supply chain will be able to keep up as they start opening?
Right. And a second force that I think you all are aware of is especially on the meat side, the reduction in capacity because of COVID outbreaks in slaughter and processing facilities. That too will work itself out, but that's quite disruptive. And the supply chain then adjusts by focusing these scarce resources, capacity on certain products, and then will forego. You might not have the same variety, but they're just trying to get you, not some special cut or lamb or something like that. No, we'll just go with, sirloin steaks and just try to keep
the easiest stuff for them to do.
The easiest stuff, right? That has the largest demand.
Two things. I want to follow up on the conversation on the meat, but before I do that, for anybody who's on who has a question for Dr. Goldsmith, throw it up on your comments here, and we'll get to them. Would love to take a couple questions on what you're thinking about as far as food supply in the U.S. goes. So a question I have is, I see obviously that all these slaughterhouses, Tyson, I think it was Foods, and some other major, Smithfield, and these guys are saying, first of all, they're having sickness in their factories, so they got to close down and clean. So that is affecting the supply chain. But then I see farmers saying, oh, I may have to slaughter all these pigs because there's not happening. Why don't they leave the pigs alive? I don't understand why they have to kill pigs, because, leave them around for when the demand comes.
Right. So you're feeding them, and slaughtering an older animal is not preferred. So animals are increasingly less efficient to keep. So it's very expensive to do that. And
so it's a huge cost, is what you're saying, with no outlook on when you'll be able to monetize that.
Right. And it's not like there aren't young pigs coming on, right? So they'll be preferred and so forth. So it's not it's not like in 2 months, demand will double and we'll need these old pigs just to meet. No, the demand will still be relatively small because the economy is shrinking, demand is shrinking, and you've got inefficiencies and so forth. So you have to slaughter, you have to dump. These are live products, and beans and, stuff in the field. If it's ready to harvest, you can't sell old beans, right? You can't, they have a narrow window. And so you have to plow them under, and that's, a significant loss when you're dealing with live biological product.
Obviously, a lot of people are having problems. This goes outside of hospitality, but making ends meet. They've lost their job. They're unemployed. They have families. They don't know when they're going to be earning a living again. And you see all this food being thrown away, but you also see these people lining up at food banks looking for food. I assume that there's a cost to producing that food, and so whoever the farmer is says, if you're not going to pay me for it, I'm not going to be able to just process it so I can give it away. But is there a way of using some of this food that is being wasted?
You do try to use it, and you see anecdotally, and that's how supply chains work, especially mature, sophisticated supply chains, that, just because I have a hog in Northwest Iowa and there's demand for a hog in Philadelphia, for pork in Philadelphia, that's a big jump for me to bring that hog, get it processed, and put
a big cost to it.
Sell it on a corner in Philly. That's just not going to happen. But you see farmers making real efforts. You see local farmers making effort to try to connect. You see food banks reaching out to try to collect some of these this excess food and so forth. So you see the philanthropy stepping in to try to do it. I mean, farmers would love. I mean, they're not doing it because they would love to.
They would love to be able to
do it, but it's just the way that we in a sophisticated supply chain. I don't have the truck, the logistics. I defer to someone else to handle my logistics downstream.
Got it. Interesting. Okay, so I read an article. I was trying to educate myself on this topic prior to this. I don't think I did a great job, but I read an article recently. It said that empty shelves at grocery stores don't signal a food shortage, but rather that the supply chain is too rigid. Is it rigid meaning that they can't change that 65-35 thing that we talked about? I mean, like they can't change how they do it?
You can't do it within 2 months.
Got it.
Right?
It takes a while to recalibrate everything.
Recalibrate everything. I mean, you think about what's in your hotels that if you went into the warehouse of your hotels, you'd see tons of toilet paper, you'd see you'd see soap, you'd see all sorts of products that are sitting there. Those are assets probably, they've already been purchased by the hotels. So pulling them out or creating a market to sell those into grocery retail, I mean, that's obviously that's not going to happen, but the form of the product, toilet paper isn't just toilet paper. Toilet paper is the timing of it, the packaging of it, the original price at the food service or institutional buyer paid. That's all very different than retail. So it's not just take those rolls of toilet paper and put them on the back of a truck and drive it over to the local Walmart or the local
interesting.
Piggly Wiggly.
Interesting. So and throwing out there again for anybody who's on who wants to ask a question, please do put it in the comments here, and I'm happy to bring up the question or thought. So one of the things, obviously, toilet paper. You bring it up. This whole time, I mean, obviously for the first month, there was no toilet paper on any shelf anywhere. Now I see a little bit here or there. But the first place I used to order it on Amazon, and then for a while you couldn't order anything. Any toilet paper, and now all I see on Amazon, if I want to order toilet paper, is product that is clearly made in China. I mean, it's Chinese. The packaging, you can just tell. I mean, it doesn't have Chinese characters on it, but just the branding of it, you can tell it's like it's not the major brands that we're normally used to here. And I had heard that making toilet paper is not a difficult thing to do. I would have thought that those toilet paper plants here, whoever makes it here, with the branding Charmin or whatever, all the brands that we're used to here, I would have thought that you could re-up those plants and just sort of pump this stuff out pretty quickly, but it's clearly taking much longer. Why are the supply chains in different countries different?
Well, I mean, I don't know the supply chain for toilet paper and how much is imported versus domestically produced, but you had a huge hoarding spike. I mean, was ridiculous, right? And people were acting maybe irrationally, maybe it was rationally at the time, but that took a lot of product out of the system. And filling that back in, those plants are working, full time, full out. It is a non-perishable product. There is probably a lot of supply locked up in institutional warehouses and so forth, waiting, because there isn't, you can see there isn't really an arbitrage there, right?
I'm not sure how valuable trading in toilet paper futures is.
Well, but you could think about strap for cash, what someone might do, and there are some little stories here and there on the internet of small hotels doing that, or somebody doing that, but the arbitrage systematically is not there, and the plants are working full out. It's just a huge shock to the system, and so that's it's hard. The same would be for hand sanitizer, for example, and you see other companies coming online to try to fill that. I mean, that demand is off the chart. And we think in terms of 1% and 2% growth in demand. I mean, we're a mature economy. You don't get these 10s and 20s and 30s and 40. What you're seeing, what you're living through, are dramatic for manufacturers and for a supply chain, whether it be trucks, which way they're going, whether it be warehouses. I mean, everything is in double digits, if not triple digits at times. I mean, that's just ridiculous. In 2 months. I mean, it's ridiculous. Yeah,
so I mean, for us, it seems like a long time, but I guess in the supply chain, and sort of the economic timing and so forth, it's actually a very short period of time that all these changes happened, and therefore it's hard for it to keep up. It's interesting. So do you, I guess the last thing I would bring up and ask here before we finish up is, do you feel like the supply chain is well positioned to get, as the economy opens back up, we're going to have a lot of things. I mean, it's going to be somewhat gradual, but at the same time, I see a lot of states just freaking opening up and pushing forward because they're sick of being inside and they really want this economic activity to happen. Will the supply chain be able to keep up, or is there going to be a lagging period as well as we ramp back up again?
Well, yeah. I mean, for me, I think it's somewhat of a red herring because we see it in the grocery stores. Obviously, it's very disruptive. But as the country opens, suppliers who, in a sense, are way over capacity in some sense, unless they're Tyson's or Smithfield, and but they certainly have the capacity, capability, and need the business. So I think that is going to sort itself out. I don't think that, obviously, episodic, there are going to be hitches and things like that of, I can't get this or I can't get this, especially if I'm a small buyer. But I think it'll adjust and work out. I think much more important is the fundamental change. When we think about food, we really think about sales and margin per square foot. And to me, how restaurants and the food system, retail, adjusts to increasing square footage and decreasing, in a sense, margin per square foot is something that, and how you are able to transform the foods that you buy and so forth to achieve the kinds of returns that you're used to when you've got spacing, when you've got real issues. That to me is the challenge, how to take a restaurant and make it bigger without more real estate, right? No, that's been a huge issue for all of our restaurateurs that we are connected with and talking to all the time. Restaurant margins are already very slim, and making them slimmer by allowing fewer customers and making it more difficult. There's going to be a real, at least in the short term, 12 to 18 months, there's going to be a real shakeout in the restaurant industry. Whether we're able to go back to normal, I hope that we can eventually. But I think there'll be a lot of innovation there on that experience to try to margin up per square foot, because you just can't cut 50% out of your volume.
No, it doesn't. You can't make any. You're not. That's restaurants don't work that way. No, I agree. That's great. Great. That's a great point. All right. I think that is all the time we have right now. Sorry about the technical difficulties in getting you on, but glad you were able to join us. That was super helpful discussion. Very interesting to me, and appreciated. We will. We have a bunch of other great programming going on, as I just mentioned earlier. Tomorrow and Friday, both on Zoom, a couple different panels. Take a look at our website, or you can see the stuff here on Instagram or LinkedIn. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Goldsmith. Fantastic.
You bet.
And we will see you on the other side. Good luck with everything.
You bet.
Bye-bye. Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everybody.